Welcome back to the deep dive. So, our mission here, as always, is pretty straightforward. You give us the source material, and we give you the crucial insights.
Right, the connections that you might have missed.
Exactly. The things that make you instantly fluent in a really complex topic. And today, we're peeling back the layers on a very specific, and I have to say, very controversial artifact from Italian cinematic history.
We are. And we're using it as a kind of a key, really, a Rosetta Stone, if you will, to decode the entire post-war entertainment landscape in Italy.
It's a truly fascinating stack of sources we have here. It's all centered around one single film, a seemingly simple but very intense melodrama from 1946.
But when you start looking at the cast list, it explodes outward. It reveals this entire hidden history of mid-century Italian culture.
Yeah, the names attached to this one project, they read like a directory of Italian theatrical giants, international stars, and
this is the crucial part.
go on.
The unseen architects, the people who fundamentally shaped how Italy consumed global cinema.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. So our source material is all centered on The Adulteress, or L'Adultera. It premiered just after the war, 1946.
A really pivotal time.
For sure. So our mission for this deep dive is to use this one highly melodramatic film as a starting point to unpack the incredible range of talents who built mid-century Italian cinema.
And it really is a range. You've got screen legends defined by scandal. You've got these hardcore stage veterans, political exiles.
And what I think is the biggest surprise, the unsung heroes of Italian voice acting.
This film, coming out almost immediately after the war ended, it's just a perfect microcosm of a society grappling with its new identity. You can see the shift happening in real time.
What kind of shift are we talking about?
Well, think about fascist-era filmmaking. It was all about grandiose historical epics, spectacles, or these purely escapist comedies.
The white telephone films, right?
White telephone films, exactly. But after the war, the sources just showed this sharp pivot. You have directors like Rossellini and De Sica tackling poverty head-on with pure near-realism.
But that wasn't what everyone was watching.
No, not at all. The popular cinema, the stuff that audiences were actually flocking to, was often what critics later, and kind of dismissively, called appendix neorealism.
Okay, that's a term we absolutely need to linger on because it really defines the reality of 1946 cinema.
It does.
It tells you that while, the elite critics and the famous directors were documenting social ruin, the average person in the audience still craved drama.
Intensity, sentimental escapism.
The tearjerkers.
Yes, the tearjerkers. But now they were infused with this slightly more contemporary, rough-around-the-edges emotional reality.
And that is exactly where The Adulteress sits. It's got the intense structure of classic melodrama, but it's grounded in a way the pre-war films just weren't.
But beyond the genre, what the sources really reveal is the deep bench of talent that made all this possible.
And the big surprise, hiding in our material, is that so many of the key actors in this one film were just as famous for other things. Major stage work, screenwriting, or having these secondary, almost dynastic careers as legendary Italian voice dubbers.
Yes. And that specific art of dubbing, it's not just a translation service in Italy. It's an integrated artistic performance. And this cast, they were pioneering its institutionalization.
That dual identity of the Italian performer, the face you see on screen and the voice that defines global stars for an entire country, that's really the engine of this deep dive. So let's unpack this. What does a heavily censored 1946 film starring a Nastro d'Argento winner tell us about Italian culture and entertainment right after World War II?
Well, it tells us that contradiction and controversy were absolutely essential ingredients.
All right, let's start with the artifact itself, The Adulteress. It premiered May 16th, 1946, directed by Duilio Colletti, shot at the Scalera Studios in Rome. And like we said, it falls squarely into that category of sentimental melodramas.
So we keep coming back to that term, appendix neorealism. It's so important to understand why critics came up with it later on.
Right.
The sources show that, this film wasn't about the logistics of surviving poverty, the hunger, the lack of housing. It wasn't Rome, open city.
No.
But it was produced during that critical transition. And it dealt with raw, often tragic, emotional crises that felt incredibly consequential in a post-war world where morality and stability were everything, but social structures were just shattered.
So it was the emotional intensity, if not the social setting, that linked it to that bigger shift toward realism.
Precisely. And the plot is a perfect vehicle for that intensity. It's just a straight-up descent into tragedy, all driven by moral calculation and fatal passion.
The source material lays out the core conflict, focusing on the protagonist, Velka, who's played by the incredible Clara Calamai.
A formidable actress.
Totally. And Velka is described as this ambitious peasant woman who makes a very transactional and very unfortunate choice.
She marries for security.
Exactly. She marries a very rich, crude, and much older landowner named Dante Viberzi, played by Carlo Ninchi.
And in doing that, she abandons her younger fiancé, Tarquinio, played by Roldano Lupi.
And in the world of melodrama, you know instantly that this first mistake, marrying for money, betraying true love, it's going to lead to a tragic reckoning.
It's inevitable. Tarquinio disappears, but, the audience knows he's the narrative time bomb. He's coming back.
And the marriage is predictably just miserable. The unhappiness hits a crisis point when the elderly husband, Dante, starts thinking about his mortality, about succession.
And he threatens her.
He threatens Velka with disinheritance if she doesn't give him a child, an heir. The pressure is immense. The trap is set.
Which, of course, is the exact moment that Tarquinio, the ex-lover, returns.
Naturally.
And the sources use this great phrase: an incurable passion ignites between the two. This leads to the affair, and fulfilling the husband's demand, the birth of a son.
The ignorance of the husband is just a core part of the tragedy. He celebrates the child, thinking his lineage is finally secure.
But you can't build a life on a lie like that, not in this genre. The lover, Tarquinio, he insists that Velka and the child run away with him, start a new life.
But she refuses, and maybe it's fear, maybe it's loyalty to the security she wanted so badly, but her refusal just triggers the climax.
A wounded and desperate Tarquinio deliberately, maliciously, reveals the truth about the child's real father to the husband.
And the result is described with this chilling clarity in our sources. The husband, Dante, driven mad by the betrayal, savagely kills the lover in revenge.
Devastating.
It's a devastating finale. Velka is left totally alone, consumed by remorse, and the plot summary says she ultimately goes crazy. It's an incredible arc.
It is, and that's the deeper cultural significance here. Why should you, listening today, care about this 1946 tearjerker plot?
Because of the reaction it caused.
Exactly. The sources are emphatic that this film was heavily censored. Several scenes were just drastically cut.
And the reason for the censorship was specifically the central theme, adultery.
Right. We have to really pause and think about Italy in 1946. The country is in this massive transition from a monarchy and a fascist dictatorship to a republic.
And it's being influenced by democratic ideals, sure, but it's still deeply, deeply entrenched in traditional, specifically Catholic, social doctrine.
And adultery, at that time, it wasn't just a moral failing. Legally and culturally, it was seen as a crime against the stability of the family, a crime against public morality.
So who's doing the censoring? This wasn't just a director making cuts for pacing. The new, fragile government was extremely sensitive to the moral agenda being pushed by conservative and religious forces.
We were very keen on restoring order and traditional values after the chaos of the war.
So a film that centers on a woman who betrays her husband, has an affair, and then this tragedy unfolds. It had to be framed very carefully.
Or cut entirely. You couldn't look like you were glorifying the transgression. The official scrutiny was fierce.
It creates this fascinating irony, doesn't it? The country is trying to move into this modern democratic age, but its cinema is still bound by these rigid, almost Victorian moral codes.
But the film's success, maybe because of the scandal, shows that the audience was ready to push those boundaries, even if the censors weren't.
And you just couldn't deny the performance at the center of it all. Despite the cuts, despite the moral panic, this film was a major launchpad for its star.
Clara Calamai won the Nastro d'Aranto, the silver ribbon for Best Actress, for her portrayal of Velka in 1946.
Which is the Italian equivalent of a major national Oscar, awarded by film journalists. So to win it for a role like this, a role defined by such moral ambiguity, that cemented her status.
It was a huge statement. It basically signaled that while the censors could cut the sex and violence, the artistic power and the depth of the tragedy could not be ignored. Calamai was a performer who seemed to thrive on roles that put women at the center of moral and social disruption.
Okay, let's turn our attention to the woman who anchored this whole complicated film, Clara Calamai. She lived from 1909 to 1998. And she wasn't just defined by this one melodrama. Her career is like a history of 20th century Italian cinema.
Absolutely. And to understand her impact, you have to go back a few years before The Adulteress, to 1942, to this landmark cinematic moment that always sort of shadows her dramatic work.
You're talking about her role in Alessandro Blasetti's The Jester's Supper.
I am. Our sources note that she briefly appeared topless in one scene.
And this detail gets thrown around as a bit of trivia, but it's loaded with historical meaning.
It is. The sources clarify that while another actress, Vittoria Carpi, had technically shown a bare breast in a different film a year earlier, Calamai's appearance is commonly credited as the first time an actress appeared fully topless in an Italian sound film.
In the middle of the fascist era.
Exactly. This wasn't just nudity. It was seen as a dramatic, transgressive act in a cinematic culture that often relied on hyper-stylized, sanitized imagery.
And the really fascinating part is the insight our sources give us into the behind-the-scenes dynamics. It connects directly to the pressures on female stars.
Calamai herself gave an account of it later. She stated very clearly that the original script did not require her to reveal herself that way. She resisted the director's request at first.
So what changed?
She said she only felt compelled to do it. Actor Blasetti, who was a major director, promised her the set would be completely closed. Only essential personnel allowed.
That dynamic is so telling. It highlights a system where a powerful director could exert immense pressure on an actress for something deeply uncomfortable.
Under the guise of artistic necessity.
Right. And then use the promise of a closed set as this form of coercive negotiation. It's a very sharp insight into the vulnerability of actors in that system.
But what makes Calamai's career so compelling is that she pivots immediately from that controversial fascist-era spectacle to what is arguably her most remembered role.
A true neorealist milestone.
Giovanna in Luchino Visconti's 1943 groundbreaking film, Ossessione.
Obsession.
The psychological whiplash for audiences must have been incredible. To go from a stylized epic to the gritty, sensual, on-location drama of Ossessione, where she plays this desperate adulteress wife, a clear precursor to her role in The Adulteress. Well, Ossessione is considered by many historians to be the first true Italian neorealist film, even before Rome, Open City. For Calamai to be the female face of that seismic shift, it shows incredible artistic versatility.
She didn't just survive the fall of fascist cinema. She helped birth its replacement.
She could do the high tragedy, the gritty reality, and the intense emotionality the new movement demanded.
And her career kept oscillating between these extremes for decades. We see her playing a prostitute in another Visconti film, White Nights, in 1957. But one of her most remarkable turns comes almost 30 years after The Adulteress.
Yes, in 1975, she comes out of retirement to appear in Dario Argento's famous horror film, Deep Red, Profondo Rosso.
Now, for our listeners who might not be specialists, we should probably clarify what a giallo film is.
We should. The term giallo literally means yellow in Italian. It references the cheap yellow covers of Italian pulp mystery novels. It's this uniquely Italian subgenre of stylish psychological thriller or horror.
Characterized by really complex, sometimes totally implausible plots, extreme violence, and this incredibly distinctive, colorful aesthetic.
Right, and in this high-concept, stylized horror film, Calamai played the eccentric matriarch, Marta.
And this was her final major film role. I mean, think about that trajectory for a moment. To span the political spectacle of the 40s, the raw birth of neorealism, and then anchor a key role in the psychedelic, violent giallo movement of the 70s.
It's a testament to her sheer adaptability, her willingness to take on cutting-edge, sometimes shocking roles her entire life.
It really speaks to the chaotic, exciting nature of Italian film. It wasn't about sticking to one persona. It was about being a working actor who could move between high art and genre thrills.
And maintain this powerful, recognizable presence through it all.
And just to tie off the personal threads from our sources, she married an explorer, Count Leonardo Bonzi, in 1945, right before this film was released.
But that marriage was annulled in 1959.
She later retired to Rimini, and there's this small but telling detail that in 2022, a stele was dedicated to her in the cemetery there, placed right near Federico Fellini's funerary monument.
Which is a monumental tribute. It places her legacy right alongside one of the true titans. Calamai might have been controversial, but she was cinema royalty.
Okay, now we pivot to another actor from the same 1946 cast list who provides one of the biggest aha moments for anyone trying to understand Italian film culture. Carlo Romano.
Yes.
He lived from 1908 to 1975, and he played a smaller role in The Adulteress, Il Fattore the Factor.
And Romano's contribution to Italian cinema goes so far beyond his own acting work, which was prolific enough. I mean, he was in 94 films. He was a screenwriter for 14.
But his true legacy, the one that shaped how generations of Italians saw global cinema, was his voice.
He is one of the foundational figures, one of the progenitors of the centralized Italian dubbing industry.
And you really can't overstate the power of that role. Unlike countries where subtitles are the norm, Italy, for all sorts of historical and political reasons, embraced dubbing completely.
Which meant that the emotional and comedic identities of massive international stars were entirely rebuilt by Italian voice actors. And Carlo Romano was the star builder.
It's fascinating. The sources list him as the official Italian voice for some of the biggest global comedy stars of the 20th century.
We're talking Jerry Lewis, Bob Hope, and Lou Costello.
Wait, all three of them?
All three. Think about what that implies for the viewer. If you grew up in Italy watching Hollywood comedies, the central personalities, the rhythm of their humor, the panic, the emotion, it was all sonically defined by the same man.
So the voice that Italian audiences associated with American slapstick comedy was Carlo Romano's voice.
It was. And that profound universality of his voice wasn't just limited to Hollywood. It extended into one of the most beloved European film franchises ever.
Don Camillo.
He was the voice of Don Camillo, the feisty village priest played by the French actor Fernandel.
Across all 5 films.
Every single one. From Little World of Don Camillo in 1952 all the way through Don Camillo in Moscow in 1965. That's nearly 15 years of this iconic sonic identity.
So for an Italian viewer, Fernandel's physical performance, his expressions, his mannerisms, became inextricably linked to Romano's voice. He wasn't just dubbing, he was. He was translating the cultural weight of that character.
He became the sonic essence of Don Camillo. And if you look at the sheer range of other actors he dubbed, it's just mind-boggling. The sources list him handling French comic legends like Louis de Funès, American song and dance men like Fred Astaire, and intense dramatic actors like James Cagney, Peter Lorre, and Ernest Borgnine.
But this is where the cultural impact of dubbing just hits home for me. He was the Italian voice of Eli Wallach's character.
Tuco Ramirez.
In Sergio Leone's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Yes, this is the nexus point we have to explore. You have the same man voicing Jerry Lewis, the epitome of high-energy, neurotic slapstick.
Right.
And Tuco, the explosive, criminal, grubby, and cynical ugly of the Western genre.
So does the source material give us any clue as to what that one unifying voice did to the Italian perception of these genres?
It doesn't state it outright, but the implication is huge. For the Italian viewer, that common vocal anchor might subconsciously unify these completely different genres.
It's almost like it provides a subtle familiarity.
Or irony. When the audience heard Tuco's voice, which was the voice of their childhood comedic heroes, did it soften his criminality? Did it make him feel more like a familiar, chaotic joker than a purely foreign, menacing figure?
It suggests they were getting a subtly different character persona than American audiences. He literally created a shared cultural voice that transcended genre.
And then you connect this to childhood nostalgia. His Disney legacy is significant and enduring.
He voiced Jiminy Cricket in the 1947 dub of Pinocchio,
creating that authoritative yet warm moral compass for Italian kids. He was the Mad Hatter in Alice in Wonderland, capturing that high-energy madness, and he was the grumpy but lovable Sheriff of Nottingham in Robin Hood.
Plus Gus the Mouse in Cinderella and Buzzy the Vulture in The Jungle Book. Carlo Romano defined the soundscape of generations of entertainment.
It just underscores how the dubbing industry wasn't a secondary service. It was an integral part of the Italian cultural machine, and Romano was the central unifying engine.
And that legacy didn't just end with him. His personal life points to how this art form became institutionalized.
That's a dynasty.
He did.
He was the son of an actress, Dino Romano.
But crucially, through his marriage to Joan Romano, he was the stepfather of actor Agliardo Ward.
And the step-grandfather of the now famous contemporary voice actors Luca, Andrea, and Monica Ward.
It's an entire family lineage dedicated to mastering and passing on this specialized, crucial art form. The story of Italian cinema is literally written by the Romano Ward family dynasty, and it all traces back to the man who played a small part in a 1946 melodrama.
It is stunning how much history is packed into one supporting cast list.
Okay.
Let's look at the remaining threads from this ensemble. Dino Di Luca, Roldana Lupi, Carlo Ninchi, Gualtiero Tumiati, and Cesare Polacco. Each one represents a different, crucial component of the industry.
Let's start with Dino Di Luca. He played Egidio Vibruzzi. He perfectly embodies the international reach of Italian theatrical talent.
He does. He was active in Italy, of course, but the sources really highlight his significant work in the United States, from the 30s all the way through the 60s.
And his American acclaim wasn't minor, it was front and center. The sources say he received critical praise on Broadway opposite the American star Shirley Booth in The Time of the Cuckoo.
And that was in 52, 53. To succeed on Broadway in the 50s, especially opposite a major American name, that was a monumental task for a European actor.
It required a complete mastery of English, a stage command that could bridge that cultural gap.
For sure. And not only did he handle high drama, but he was also in the musical House of Flowers, based on a book by Truman Capote.
Incredible versatility, from intense drama to a Broadway musical.
And he leveraged that stage success into the new medium of American television. He was all over the place. Studio One, the Kraft Television Theater, the United States Steel Hour.
He was a living bridge between the Italian stage and the American entertainment industry. He's also credited as a writer for a film back in 1938, just a multi-talented guy.
Now let's look at the bedrock, the core actors who kept the industry running. The dependable, prolific leading men.
We start with Carlo Ninchi, who played the aging, crude husband, Dante Fabrizi, the man whose demands drive the whole plot.
And Ninchi was a fixture, incredibly prolific, more than 120 films between 1931 and 1963. That is the career of a working professional who was just constantly in demand.
His filmography is like a timeline of what audiences wanted to see. He excelled in the grand historical roles that the fascist regime favored.
Exactly. He was Lelius in the massive epic Scipio Africanus, The Defeat of Hannibal. He was the Lion of Damascus in 2 films.
The big, expensive spectacles. But he transitioned seamlessly into the melodrama of The Adulteress and just kept working.
Then you have Roldano Lupi, who played Tarquinio, the vengeful lover. He was in 60 films, a huge body of work.
And he was in other important post-war films, like The Gates of Heaven, but later he moved into the genre stuff that became so popular.
Right. The Mongols, Avenger of the Seven Seas. The kind of escapist spectacle that filled the commercial gap left by the more austere, neorealist films.
Okay, now we pivot back firmly to the stage with Gualtiero Tumiati. He played the old fortune teller in The Adulteress.
And Tumiati's career is it's a study in sheer longevity. He lived to be 94, active across 2 centuries.
His background is so fascinating, the epitome of the cultured Italian artist. He studied acting, but he also had a law degree. His breakout role was way back in 1910, playing Cyrano de Bergerac.
And he wasn't just a classical performer. He was a visionary. In 1928, he co-founded the Sala Azzurra, the Blue Room, one of Italy's first dedicated avant-garde theaters.
So in the middle of the fascist period, which preferred conformity, he was pushing experimental boundaries.
That duality is key. He taught acting for years, but the sources highlight this profoundly moving detail about the end of his career.
What's that?
He eventually went blind. And yet, his final stage role, fittingly, was playing the blind prophet Tiresias in Sophocles' Oedipus Rex at La Scala in 1969.
Wow. That is an extraordinary final curtain call, the actor's personal fate mirroring the tragic character he was portraying.
It elevates him from just a working actor to this theatrical patriarch. And even he appeared in genre films, including Little World of Don Camillo, linking him back to the Carlo Romano universe.
Finally, we come to Cesare Polacco. He played the old man of the jewels. His story provides the most critical piece of political context here.
This is a detail we absolutely cannot overlook. It speaks to the resilience of the talent pool after the dictatorship collapsed. Polacco was of Jewish origin.
And the sources confirm he was tragically forced to abandon his acting career because of the 1938 fascist racial laws.
Those laws purged Jewish citizens from public life. It meant a complete stop to his career, exile in his own country, years of silence.
So his presence in The Adulteress, just 1 year after the war's end, resuming his career in 1945. It's a profound symbol of rebuilding.
It is a symbol of the desperate attempt to restore exiled and marginalized talent to the Italian screen. But his later career brought him this massive mainstream popularity.
He became a household name as Inspector Rock in a series of shorts that aired in Carosello.
And we have to explain Carosello. It was more than a commercial break. It was mandatory appointment viewing for Italian families.
Right, because of strict advertising rules, commercials were built into these 5-minute skits, often starring well-known actors.
So Inspector Rock became a national icon. He transitioned from a stage veteran, a survivor of fascist persecution, into a comedic television star.
And, like Carlo Romano, he was also a key voice actor. He dubbed major Hollywood figures like Ward Bond, Anthony Quinn, Boris Karloff.
And he also contributed to that early Disney legacy. He was the voice of Happy in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and One of the Crows in Dumbo, another unseen craftsman bridging the gap between global fantasy and Italian culture.
So, if we connect this whole mosaic back to the single film that launched this deep dive, what this material overwhelmingly shows is that post-war Italian cinema wasn't just the product of a few visionary directors.
No, It was built on a massive, highly skilled, and deeply resilient bench of veteran talent.
These were actors who were forced to become cultural chameleons, capable of adapting instantly to dramatic shifts, from fascist epics to near-realist dramas to popular melodramas.
And then pioneering and institutionalizing the specialized art of dubbing that defined the Italian movie experience for decades.
It was a period where necessity drove invention.
Absolutely. The simultaneous existence of scandalous cinema with Calamai's career, international talent like Dino Di Luca on Broadway, the political resilience of Cesare Polacco.
And the development of this unique, dynastic voice acting industry with Carlo Romano all inside one cast list, it just highlights the intense, adaptive, frenetic energy of Italy's cultural scene in the 40s and 50s.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener?
Well, we started this deep dive talking about a film that was heavily censored because its subject matter, adultery, was considered transgressive.
Right. And this raises an important question. When we talk about classic international cinema, we almost always focus on the visual, the physical performance of the star.
Sure, the director's vision, the script, body language.
But when you consider how central voice actors like Carlo Romano were in shaping the actual identity of global stars, giving the voice to Jerry Lewis, or the sound of Don Camillo, or the dialogue of Tuco for Italian audiences, how much of a star's persona is truly universal?
And how much is meticulously crafted and ultimately owned by the unseen voice artists who bridge the linguistic gaps? They're effectively creating a separate, Italianized version of that star.
It's a profound thought. It suggests cinematic performance is inherently collaborative and culturally specific. Italian audiences weren't just watching a translated film, they were consuming an entirely different cultural creation.
It forces you to question the concept of stardom itself and to acknowledge these invisible artists who often carry the entire emotional weight of a character for a whole nation.
So think about the power of the dubbed voice one last time. If the high-stakes comedy of Jerry Lewis, the religious warmth of Don Camillo, and the moral compass of Jiminy Cricket all sounded like the same person, Carlo Romano to generations of Italians.
How did that single voice shape the cultural landscape? Did it create subtle, unconscious connections between those completely different genres?
Did Romano's unifying voice make global comedy and animation feel profoundly, comfortably Italian? It's a question worth exploring the next time you watch a classic foreign film and recognize that the sound you hear is its own masterpiece of cultural transplantation.